Hi, my name is Justin and I'm with Ascend Finance. Today, we're going to cover Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Kentucky. Now, first question I want to start with is what percentage of Chapter 13 bankruptcies do you think actually end successfully, meaning get you out of the debt? Sadly, it's only 38.8%. Why? Well, it's often related to cost. So one of the most important things to consider when looking at Chapter 13 bankruptcy is your monthly Chapter 13 plan payment. Today, we'll help estimate your Chapter 13 plan payment later on in the video, as well as some alternatives, so be sure to watch till the end. We will also cover the following important factors of a Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Kentucky. For instance, first, we'll go through a Chapter 13 quick bankruptcy introduction. Second, we'll move on to your monthly Chapter 13 plan payment. Third, the Chapter 13 bankruptcy cost specifically in Kentucky. Fourth, the Chapter 13 bankruptcy process in Kentucky. Fifth, the Chapter 13 bankruptcy pros and cons. And finally, sixth, we'll go through the alternatives to a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Before we begin, please understand a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, specifically in Kentucky, can be really complex. So feel free to ask any questions or leave a comment below, and we'll do our best to respond to you as quickly as possible. Also, please feel free to leave a like if you enjoyed, as it was always encouraging for us to see. But now let's cover a quick introduction. So Chapter 13 bankruptcy is known as a wage earners plan because it allows individuals with a regular income to pay back some or most all of their debts. The Chapter 13 bankruptcy plan is a monthly payment for often 3 or 5 years. People tend to like Chapter 13 because it can stop wage garnishment, potentially foreclosure, and provide you legal protection from your creditors. One of the most important things to consider is the affordability of a Chapter 13 plan. Basically, the question is, how much do you have to pay each month, and how long are you going to be in this Chapter 13 for? The reason that your Chapter 13 plan payment is important is that it actually may be more expensive than your current debt obligation. With that being said, it also can be less expensive, so it really does depend. We got this question so often that we actually built a Chapter 13 bankruptcy calculator based on the actual bankruptcy forms. You can estimate your Chapter 13 plan payment based on your specific zip code using our Kentucky Chapter 13 bankruptcy calculator in the description below. But now let's discuss how your Chapter 13 plan payment works specifically in Kentucky, the various costs and fees attached, the Chapter 13 bankruptcy process in Kentucky, the pros and cons, and the alternatives to a Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Kentucky. So let's talk about your Chapter 13 plan in Kentucky. There are various factors of what goes into your Chapter 13, so let's go into those. First is your disposable income. This is the amount of income you have each month after subtracting the allowable payroll deductions and the allowable living expenses from your gross monthly income. On the government's means testing website, you can find the local standards for Kentucky for housing, utilities, and transportation allowables. Now for your assets. In some cases, the value of your assets could increase the amount of your Chapter 13 plan if your assets have a large amount of non-exempt equity. For example, if you own a home with a great deal of equity that is actually above the Kentucky bankruptcy exemptions, then your Chapter 13 plan payment could be much higher. Now, with regards to your debts, some debts must be paid in full through a Chapter 13 plan. Priority unsecured debts like taxes, alimony, child support, or administrative costs. Other creditors may only receive a partial payment. Those are going to be the including of the non-so-priority debts, which are the unsecured debts like medical bills, credit card debt, and potentially personal loans. Chapter 13 plans do typically include back mortgage payments as well as car loan payments. Now, finally, another factor is your recent financial transactions. Some recent financial transactions could impact your Chapter 13 plan payment. One last factor is the duration. Duration is also an important thing to consider when deciding whether to file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy or not. The big question is, are you eligible for a 3 or 5 year plan? Your average monthly income compared to the Kentucky median income guideline is used to help determine whether you qualify for a 3 or 5 year plan. Below and in the description is the median income guidelines for Kentucky for cases filed after May 15th, 2021. You can always check the government's means testing website for up-to-date data, as it tends to change every 6 months. Now let's go through the Chapter 13 bankruptcy fees in Kentucky. So the main fees to consider in a Kentucky bankruptcy is the Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney fees, the trustee fees, the filing fees, the potential bankruptcy courses, and any miscellaneous costs attached. The Chapter 13 calculator below in the description also accounts for all these fees, so let's cover them one by one. First is the attorney fees. So the Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney fee in Kentucky is estimated to be around $3,000 to $4,000. The fee may depend on each district, so a Chapter 13 attorney fee may be different from Lexington compared to Bowling Green. Now, the trustee fees. Another cost, like I was stating, is the Chapter 13 trustee fees. A Chapter 13 bankruptcy is often a 3 or 5 year plan, so there are many administrative costs or tasks for the Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustee. Here is a breakdown of Kentucky Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustee fees, which tends to be between 4.3% to 6.5%. Now, the filing fee. The bankruptcy filing fee for a Chapter 13 case is $313. This fee is paid directly to the bankruptcy court. It's a national fee and not specific to Kentucky. There are also miscellaneous fees, such as a bankruptcy course, as well as getting to the actual court. So those are important to consider as well. 4. Chapter 13 bankruptcy process. So let's now cover the Chapter 13 bankruptcy process. The process is important to understanding when filing bankruptcy. So here are some questions to consider in the process to file. First, understand the different types of bankruptcies. So most folks will file a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, but it's important to know the differences. Chapter 7 is often cheaper and provides faster debt relief, but each has its own pros and cons. Second, understand which debts will be eliminated. Many unsecured debts are eliminated in a Chapter 13, but it's good to understand which ones are and which are not. Third, estimate your Chapter 13 bankruptcy plan payment. It's good to get an idea of what your 13 could look like for you specifically. 4, understand alternatives to filing Chapter 13 bankruptcy. The main alternatives to Chapter 13 bankruptcy are Chapter 7, debt settlement, debt management, and debt payoff planning. 5, determine whether to hire a Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney to file bankruptcy. 6, take a credit counseling course. 7, file bankruptcy petition and other forms. 8, a Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustee is assigned to your bankruptcy filing. 9, attend the Chapter 13 bankruptcy court meetings. 10, take a second mandatory debt education course. 11, continue to make your Chapter 13 monthly payments. And 12, you'll receive your bankruptcy discharge. As you can see, there's a whole slew of steps in the process, but some of the processes are just understanding whether you'd like to file bankruptcy or not. The 5th, let's go over the Chapter 13 bankruptcy pros and cons. We'll first cover the pros and cons, the first pro is it can prevent foreclosure so that you can keep your home by catching up with the past due mortgage payments over 3 to 5 years. Another pro, it can stop wage garnishments, seizures, levies, or any debt collection lawsuits. Pro, it can stop creditor harassment. Another pro, it can stop wage garnishments I was saying before. You may also get a discharge on a second mortgage through a Chapter 13. Another pro, you may be able to pay less than what you owe to satisfy the secured lien on your vehicle. Another pro, catch up on past due child support and alimony. Another pro could be getting rid of unsecured debts for pennies on the dollar. You may be able to resolve tax debts and IRS problems. And finally, another pro would be that you can protect property from being sold to pay the debts. Now, let's cover the downsides. One con is the cost of the Chapter 13 bankruptcy can sometimes be expensive. And it's often 3 or 5 years. It can have a negative impact on your credit score, and it can reflect negatively on your credit report as well. 2 other cons are, first, low payment flexibility. It may have a difficulty variability of what your payment would look like. And finally, your monthly plan payment can increase if your income increases. Now we have an idea of the pros and cons. I want to jump into Chapter 13 bankruptcy alternatives. So now let's cover the common Chapter 13 bankruptcy alternatives in this video here. So first, let's cover Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So Chapter 7 bankruptcy is often the least expensive option and the fastest form of debt relief. You can get rid of debt relief in as little as 120 days, and there's no Chapter 13 trustee, and the attorney fees are also a lot less expensive because the cases are less complex. Many people file a Chapter 7 when they qualify and are not at risk of losing any belongings in the bankruptcy. Second, let's cover debt settlement. So debt settlement is where a company or you negotiate and settle debt with your creditors. The goal is to reduce the payment burden of all your debt by around 50%, which will help lower your monthly payment, thus providing debt relief. There are definitely pros and cons of debt settlement, so definitely do your research. Third, let's cover debt management. Debt management is often where a nonprofit credit counseling agency negotiates the interest rate on your current debt. They may negotiate a high interest credit card on a 25% interest rate down to 9%. The goal is to reduce your monthly payment. You may also be on a 3 or 5 year payment plan. I hope this video has been helpful in your understanding of filing a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. You can visit the Chapter 13 bankruptcy calculator below to estimate your planned payment. Did you learn anything, something new from this video? Please click the subscribe button, as we're going to put more and more videos out to hopefully help you make the most informed decision. Now, I'd like to turn it over to you. What are some questions you have about filing Chapter 13 bankruptcy? Please comment below, and I'll do my best to respond as quickly as possible. Thanks for watching.